These are always fun. Martin versus Taylor, Taylor versus Martin. This time, are used Martins actually more valuable than used Taylors? Is this true or an urban myth? Find out. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee.
And I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos. If you'd like to support the channel, visit our spring store link below for our custom design t-shirts. So this is an interesting question, and it's something that I think there's some truth to with some qualifiers, and that is, in this great debate that people like to have between Martin and Taylor, are Taylors inherently more valuable in the used market, vintage market, what have you? And you know, we've seen some stuff at guitar shows.
Yeah.
You know, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
Is that farmers?
Yeah, but we're not farmers. Farmers only, maybe.
We're guitarists, all right?
So, but since you've been to some guitar shows with me,
Yeah.
What is your take on this? And I'll give you my take, and we'll kind of see what's real and what's hype.
I've seen that it doesn't matter what condition it's in. If you have a Martin that starts with 1930, you got gold.
Like if it had is really nothing left over except for like dryer lint and rusted strings.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars.
Somebody's going to pay you 70 grand for a 1933 Martin, and you're not even going to be able to play it because the top will collapse.
But what if it's been retopped? They want
If
the
it's
same amount of money.
Yeah, you want a little more, actually. Yeah, the thing is, I've been to 2 shows with Chris now, and both of them, we've seen pre-war Martins that are like, 5 figures easy.
Yeah.
And then really nice ones. You'll go to certain guitar shops in certain cities in Tennessee.
Like Nashville?
Yeah. And I mean, they're beautifully kept up sometimes, and it's like nobody can afford this.
That's a great example, actually, because it's a great qualifier, actually.
Yeah.
We've talked about it in our video about Guitarlington that, like we just described, you'll see some really bad examples of vintage instruments for astronomical prices. But if you visit like Gruhn's, for instance, they're very good about, here are the repairs that have been done to the instrument, and I think they're pretty fair with their valuation depending upon what you're buying the guitar for.
Yeah.
I played a Golden Age, like it was a 0042, I think, in the upper room of Gruhn's. That was one of the best guitars I've ever played. And I think the price tag on it was like $48,000. And it was phenomenal. It was not, from a playing standpoint, a musician standpoint, worth $40 or whatever $1,000. But for a collector, it probably would be.
Yeah. So I got a few things. One, we're talking Martin and Taylor today.
Yeah.
We're not bringing Gibson into the question. We're not bringing Fender in there. We're talking the modern king and the all-time Shogun,
all-time
Emperor,
heavyweight,
whatever. Yeah. So, did Martin, to your knowledge, have an era, say like Gibson with adjustable bridges?
Yes.
What is the era that you think of that Martin was not?
It was the late
Killing
60s through the 70s.
Yeah.
And I'm not too familiar with a bunch of 80s Martins. I've played very few of them. I don't know. Maybe just because there weren't that many being produced. 80s was like, hair metal and stuff. But yeah, basically, after the folk movement died, you had a company that had grown dramatically, and now like disco's being ushered in and stuff. And so there were 2 things for Martin that were at work that were problematic. One was they were producing so many instruments at some point that they literally had tooling wearing out. So on the Martin headstock, you'll see some old ones that are like really rounded. Yeah. And it's literally because the tool used to make the shape of the headstock was being so overused that it was rounding and losing the design. And my understanding is that that same kind of wear played into bridge issues and stuff, causing intonation issues. Yeah. And that's just because they were being too successful, actually. They're producing too many guitars to keep up with it. And then based upon the things I've read and heard from the people that were around at that time, it's like someone just shut off the faucet. And so you had the company struggle. It went to like a quarter of its size. And there were also some decisions that were made. Like we've talked about the D28. The D28 was changed. They removed the herringbone binding and they put heavier bracing in, similar to changes Gibson made around the same time, that made it stronger but less resonant to deal with warranty claims and stuff like that. It was just a bad, from a design standpoint, maybe I shouldn't say bad. It makes the guitar less of what it is. It gives it a different tonality, and that's why they now have two models. The HD28 being more like the original D28, and the D28 carrying through that like 60s design.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
interesting.
So yeah, that was, and it was funny because a lot of the companies had the same struggles around the same time.
Yeah.
Fender did with electric guitars. CBS bought them. They had great kind of popularity into the 70s. You had the Beatles and Hendrix, and everyone's still playing this stuff, even large headstocks and whatnot, thin lines and everything. But as you get into the 70s, yeah, they really suffered as a company.
So my point in asking that, and part of my thesis for this conversation is, Taylor has not had a fallen out period. They started good and they've become better.
Yeah, you could argue that Taylor's period of poor instruments was their beginning.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. You started good and then you improve. And so there was never a period of time where somebody was like, man, Taylor really has fallen off. I want one of those old school
the
Taylors
golden
that
era.
was even better. And the other thing is, Taylor now has introduced V-class bracing within the last few years, and everybody wants that. Everybody that I talk to has shunned maybe some older
There's some people
things.
that don't. I know some old Taylor fans that are like, they don't like the sound.
Yeah, I mean,
or they think they don't like the sound because they read something online.
They think they don't like the sound. That's the thing. But we've seen.
You're wrong. No,
you're wrong. We've seen some really, really solid like 814s recently that have come to the store, and they found great homes because they're fantastic guitars.
Yeah.
But they were early 2000s or something.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, I want that new V-class. And so I think there will come a leveling off time when people are like, man, V-class is awesome. I do like the sound of this older school Taylor.
Yeah.
But throughout many, many decades of Martin X bracing, scalloped or not, you know, I think it's a different change in Taylor that maybe has, at least for now, pushed people off of older school stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I think, going back to Martin has this golden era, so to speak. The pre-war stuff is what's looked at for a variety of reasons. I think people look back on that out of a combination of nostalgia, desire for tone woods that aren't as readily available anymore, like an Adirondack Brazilian Rosewood Dreadnought. But what's interesting is that the designs, there's been tweaks here and there, but they're largely unchanged, and in a lot of ways improved. At the Martin Museum, I played a old 0042 with banjo tuners on it. It was beautiful. It sounded great, but I was like, banjo tuners, really? Not what I would choose on a guitar. There's a reason that you don't see acoustic guitars with them today, because it's just not really appropriate for the design.
That's not appropriate, all right?
Yeah, you just don't go there.
Get that out of here. Yeah.
And so sometimes I think there's nostalgia and there's collectability, and that is really, I think, where it's at. Something gets old enough that effectively they're not making any more old stuff. You can reissue it all day long, but there's only so many real 1930s Martins.
Yeah.
And that creates a collectability market. And so whether it's watches, old movie posters, dear God, don't let Beanie Babies become a thing again. But people can collect anything, and when it's rare and when it's historical, things like that will drive the price up. And so Martin, because of its age, I think that's the first thing it has going for it. We're going to, on the average, say that yes, older Martins are worth more than older Taylors on the used market because they go back a lot further, and the really old ones are worth astronomical prices. Taylor started in the mid-70s. So now I have seen some very early vintage, like Lemon Grove era Taylors and stuff go for more money.
Yeah.
But it's for the same reason.
Yeah.
It's collectability, not that the instrument's better. And so I will say this, I push back a bit on the idea of Martin's golden era. I think they make really, I'll say this, the guitars that they're making right now in the past few years have been some of the best guitars I've seen them make in the last 20 years, at least.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Maybe longer. They are hitting a stride. I think it comes down to competition. You know, one of the things that we find in a capitalist society is like different companies push one another, right? If you have competition, your product has to improve to keep up with the competition. And I think we have seen Martin do that. As Taylor grows and moves in, you know, they might lose market share. They have to innovate and they have to improve or make changes, and they've done really good jobs. So, you know, that's, if you just look at the state of the companies, I think that's where it's at. And there's a reason why there's more valuable stuff. But here's the weird thing. I was looking at something yesterday, and this might strike you odd. Do you know Dave Matthews had a signature Taylor?
Yeah.
It was based on the 914. Mm-hmm. Did you know he had a signature Martin?
I didn't. What was the...
It was based on like an HD35. It had a 3-piece back and then like a similar 3-piece headstock. I don't remember him playing, except I think with Dave Reynolds he played it.
Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, or Tim Reynolds, yeah.
I know that they've played like some Dreadnoughts at the Live at Radio City concert, because I was obsessed with that live album. I've listened to it so many times. And I remember I always thought about Dave with like a 914 style, or like, what is it, the Rock Bridge, I think, that is that jumbo.
He had 3 Taylor 914s, and just like mine. And I used to joke I bought mine before Dave. I did. But people would be like, oh, you're a big Dave Matthews fan. No, he's a Chris McKee fan.
That's
the
true.
truth of it.
I think he would be. He's a nice guy. I think we'd all get along.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, that's interesting.
So here's my point bringing that up. He had 2 signature models from these 2 companies. Mm-hmm. He did the Martin signature model first. There were so many of them built. He did the Taylor signature model later. There were so many of them built. I couldn't find a single one available for purchase right now, but the ones that had been for sale and sold, the Martins were more expensive than the Taylors. And I don't really get it.
You know, I think that's interesting. I'm solely basing this off of what we've had in the store. So it's a tiny sample size. But some of the very, very cool signature Taylors and early special Taylors that we have had and then sold have held their value beautifully. Clint Black, Kenny Loggins, that just everything that we've really seen that's something a little special. I think the people who love Taylor, they're going to spend a Martin money on it, you know what I'm saying?
Here's examining the situation. I think I've pinpointed it this way, and I'll just put it out there. I think if you're looking at the collectibles market, vintage instruments, Martin is always going to be kind of king for that rarity and old, early, 20th century stuff. And if you look at current production used market, it's a wash. They're about the same.
Yeah.
Used current production 814 CE has about the same amount of value in it as a used current production HD28 does. I don't think we're seeing value of used guitars go up because of lack of availability right now, but it's not because of like the builder. I do think that when you're looking at current production instruments, Taylor probably hurts their resale value to the point you're making earlier, that they're always trying to make a better guitar. Mm-hmm. And if they are always making a better guitar, some guitars are going to not hold value. But I've seen it coming back, like after a certain amount of time. Now an older, like 900 series is becoming a lot more valuable than it was maybe 8 years ago. But the limited editions, the signature models, those fall limiteds and stuff that they do that are limited and rare, those do tend to hold their value a lot more.
Yeah. I'm thinking about what you're saying, certain things coming back. I've seen some really interesting, unintuitive, people that you think playing Taylors, playing like older 410s and 810s and stuff, and finding value in these guitars that have been discontinued. Not people, you think if you're like, man, I want a Taylor 814, 914, something like that. But then there's these cool square shoulder dreadnoughts
Yeah.
that I mean, a lot of country guys I've seen recently,
They're playing
killing it
those.
on
I
those
really
guitars.
liked the before they discontinued the square shoulder, the 10 body, the 710 and the 510 were kind of like cousins in the lineup.
Yeah.
They were pairs. Slide ahead, stock, shorter scale. And they were just cool guitars.
cool, yeah.
That really didn't find a place. And so, yeah, things like that exist across the board, and you can find values. With Martin, they were trying to do that GP body in the upper lineup for a bit, and they had a few different, like the GP Aura and stuff, that really didn't land, and they're so good. I mean, it's effectively like a Grand Auditorium-sized standard 28 series, and you can get good deals on them.
Yeah.
And so the same thing kind of applies in both situations. I think this is kind of speaks to how the guitar market as a whole tends to see things. The other thing that's surprising is this. If you're in the know, you'll know that a D28 from 2012 is not the same as a D28 now. And you kind of see that reflected in prices on like Reverb and whatnot, where because arguably, I think, maybe not very arguably, maybe matter-of-factly, the current D28, when they reimagine the line's better. And if you have an older D28 and you love it, that's cool. But I think most people think it's better, just like most people think that the current Taylors are better than the previous designs. And the next ones will probably be better. That's the idea. But you see that reflected in the pricing of the used market. So
I think that this is not a knock on Martin at all, because if I have a list of like 10 dream guitars, half of them are Martins. It's whatever. Taylor's just more fun, and they'll take more chances and they'll do more special things. They will throw out different woods, different designs, all this cool stuff. And
but Martin will do Felix the Cat.
Martin, it's just like sometimes
They're fun.
they're fun.
They'll do Sailor Joe tattoo guitars. That's fun.
I think it's a great comparison in the two
They
customs that we
they
picked
did an
up.
American Chopper.
Oh yeah,
metal top
That's
guitar.
what I'm talking about. So
No,
you think about
there are some misfires in my opinion. Okay.
yeah, the Brexit guitar. Give me a break.
Yeah,
All
the
right.
Brexit guitar was probably the final straw for me. I was just like, no.
If you're not familiar with that, I'm pretty sure it had George,
George
Washington
Washington
in
with that.
sunglasses, and it said, "Been there, done that." And I'm like, yeah, this is kind of a sensitive topic for a lot of cats. All right. So anyway, I think it's a good comparison. You think about the two customs that we picked up from Guitar Link 10
Yeah.
that we did a comparison of. A deep body OM
Yeah.
that to the naked eye, that's a Martin. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Versus that Catch that was insane to look at,
Yeah.
Sinker Redwood top. I mean, Taylor will do a lot more to make you feel like you have a one-of-a-kind guitar that is irreplaceable, and this will, and that's not to say that certain Martins aren't one-of-a-kind and beautiful and everything, but they stick to a certain core value. Mm-hmm. We're seeing it change with the SCs. That's
Right.
that's
That's what I was
great,
about to say.
But it's a different vibe, and obviously for the Martin guy, that's what that guy wants, and for the Taylor guy, it's a little more open. It's a little California vibe.
To your point, I'd like to see Martin do a little bit more with limited editions. They tend to do it through the custom shop, probably for a number of reasons. Those are very special instruments, but it does limit the availability of them. So we've had things like quilted maple guitars that
Incredible
were
guitars.
awesome, and you get so few of them. Just period. They're just not very many available. Taylor will tend to do more available, not as a custom, but as a limited, with something very special in the same way. I'll tell you something that there's a Taylor I've always wanted to own, and my wife knows it, and I look at them occasionally, and I can't afford it, but it's a Liberty Tree guitar. And,
Nobody can afford that.
well, this is my point. When they came out, they were $8,000, and all I've ever seen those things do is go up in price. And it's very special wood, and it's arguably like it's a lot of history and special aspect to that versus how good the tone wood is. It's really old poplar,
Yeah.
from a very special tree. But I love those guitars. I love the story, and that's the one thing that I would love to have. But every time I look at them, they're just more expensive today than they were yesterday.
Yeah.
So it happens across the board. But I think Martin's history really gives it a lot. And I've encouraged them repeatedly on this channel and in meetings to get back to those roots. They were the first Taylor. They were the innovators. I think we're seeing that with the SC body and the neck mount and all of that stuff. And so what we might see happen is Martin get to be like, they're constantly improving things, and that will affect the near-term value of used guitars, like it does Taylor. The other thing, too, is you're holding an American-made 314 CE. I'm holding a Mexican-made Road Series from Martin. This is never going to appreciate in value as much because it's not made in the U.S., and there's people that think it's not a real Martin.
Yeah.
I disagree with that statement, but I get where they're coming from a used standpoint.
Yeah.
People see a standard series U.S.-made Martin as like heirloom.
The standard.
I can hand it down. It is, I've wanted an HD28 all my life, that kind of thing. So, and that plays into its value.
Yeah. So if you think about it, Martin comes around end of the 19th century, and then they got a few solid decades in there, and then those became pre-war Martins. Taylor came around, not at the end, but before,
tail end.
Middle end of the 20th century. Let's hope this is not a pre-war Taylor. You know what I'm saying? But there's like 100 extra years.
Here's the fascinating thing about Taylor with Andy Powers. I appreciate that they've made the decision to name a successor designer builder who's like the guy who makes the decision.
Yeah.
Right? And crafts things based upon his designs rather than by committee, because that can be good, but I think more often than not it's bad. And Andy has said, within his working lifetime, and he's my age, that he wants to basically try to reach this epoch of flat top acoustic guitar design in a factory. That's his goal. And he's well on his way to do it. And that creates some interesting aspects to it. I don't, people wondered, will Bob Taylor or Taylors be worth more than Andy Power Taylors? And I just don't think so. Because as a company, they're constantly they're pushing against history and pushing toward innovation. And Martin has, to this point, been looking back to history. Yeah. And I think there's some changes, and I think it's needed. And that will affect the used market going forward.
I wonder if when our great-great-grandsons in 21, 22 are doing guitar reviews for Alamo Music, if they'll be talking about the resale value of Powers era Taylors. You know what I'm saying? And you got a little Zach Marr Jr. still at the helm.
I've left my kids all have a say on my guitars one day.
That's more.
Like, you'll have. Well, it is what it is. I just say, hey, wait till I'm gone. But be like, what will the value of a early aughts 914? My Doyle X model is going up in value. Like, I would never sell these things, but I just look at them and go like, really interesting. Okay, so there you go. Yeah.
I picked these two guitars because they're not the most.
Because they're mirroring.
They're not first of all, I don't sit around holding left-handed guitars for a while.
It's a hidden talent.
It feels very weird to me, and my back kind of hurts now. But
welcome to your 40s.
Yeah. Oh no. We get stuff that's a little out of the ordinary, even if it's not your HD28 custom V or your Macassar Ebony. So we have lefties if you want one, and that's a D12E.
Yep.
But Martin does some cool stuff every once in a while. They say, hey, we happen to have some D12s without E. We got a bunch of those. I mean, it's like always check because...
And save yourself some coin.
Yeah, they're cool people either way, whether it's East or West Coast, and they send us nice, fun things. So, we got a little bit of everything.
Absolutely.
And where do you find them, Chris?
On alamomusic.com is where you find them.
Dude, yeah.
So we'll wrap up and we'll say this. I don't think we answered a question very well today at all, but I hope we started a debate, because I'd like to hear in the comments below, how do you come down on this? Do you think we nailed it? We kind of have a good understanding of what the market's doing and why it's doing it? Or we're completely off base, or you've seen a lot of things that don't line up with our thoughts? Let us know in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, you subscribe, you turn on notifications, you like our videos, you keep coming back for more. I don't care how valuable it is. At the end of the day, the very best guitar, whether it's $5,000, $500, or $50,000 is the one you're playing. So play the guitar, even if you spent 6 figures on it. That's what it's all about. Anyways, that's my opinion. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.